Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are going to be doing chapter 6 this week on consciousness. Okay, what is consciousness? This is the awareness of your surroundings and what is in your mind at any given moment. So, this includes aspects of being awake and aware. We have to be awake, not asleep, and we have to be aware of something. We're either going to be aware of what's going on around us in the immediate environment, or we might be aware of what's going on in our mind. And all day long, we're going between our thoughts, internal feelings, and external observations of our environment. So, those combinations, they make up our experiences of any moment as we're moving through it. This is going to include objective processes of consciousness, sleeping, perception, sensation, and our subjective processes of consciousness. How does it feel to be in love? What does your favorite food taste like? This is where we're applying our own thoughts, opinions, interpretations of whatever moment we're experiencing. We have the objective experience. I am literally processing the taste of this food. Neural connections are firing. And then I have my subjective interpretations. I like this food. I don't like this food. So objective and subjective make up our process of consciousness. Consciousness, we have three different cognitive perspectives on how we can be consciously aware of what's going on around us and what's going on in our own minds. Global workspace theory is our main cognitive perspective we'll be talking about. This is where we are temporarily attending to information at hand or deemed important. So attention is what determines what we will be consciously aware of. So here in this global workspace theory, you can see over here on this diagram, we can be attending to our past. We can be attending to the present moment. We may be focusing on something that we're studying. We can be applying value and subjectivity to our experiences. We may be thinking about the future. Global workspace means our attention is jumping around to whatever we feel like is appropriate to give our attention to in that given moment. And we have different areas of our brain firing at the same time to help us make sense of whatever we're attending to. And this is called synchronization. So, synchronization is how our brain is processing that information to create the conscious experience. So, we're attending to something, we have different areas of our brain that are firing, like we're noticing the color of an object, we're noticing the size of the object. What is the object? We're pulling from past experience that tells us what this object is. And so we have all this going on at once, and that helps us have conscious awareness of whatever we're attending to. There is also the cognitive perspective that consciousness is a learned process. So the radical learning process states that consciousness is a skill the brain acquires. Basically, throughout our life, we are always having at least partial awareness of what is going on around us. It is not an all or none phenomenon. So when we're talking about global workspace theory, it's stating that attention is the spotlight. We're either giving something our attention or we're not giving something our attention. Consciousness as a learned process through radical learning process states we're always kind of having partial awareness of what is going on around us, and that is creating a learning process that helps inform our consciousness as we go forward. So radical learning process basically states, your own experiences throughout your life. We are gaining the skill of conscious awareness. We're growing our conscious awareness as we take in more information through partial awareness. So basically, if maybe I'm giving my full attention over here, but I'm still partially aware of other things going on around me. So important to kind of note, a lot of times we're dealing with global workspace theory when we think of consciousness. But there's also this concept that we do have attention that's also going on that's not just what we're selectively attending to. So consciousness operates on two dimensions. Those dimensions are wakefulness and awareness. Wakefulness is the degree of alertness, whether or not we are awake or asleep or somewhere in the middle of that. And awareness is our monitoring of information from the environment and our own thoughts. So you can see here on this diagram, we have wakefulness increasing on that x-axis and awareness increasing on the y-axis. If we are lacking both wakefulness and awareness, that would perhaps be a coma, or what we experience when we're under general anesthesia. If we are experiencing wakefulness but no awareness, that would be a vegetative state. So wakefulness meaning the brain is indicating it is not unconscious, it is not completely devoid of being awake. There are sleep-wake cycles that we even have with vegetative states, but there is no awareness of anything going on around them. There's no information from the environment that's being taken in, and there's no processing of your own thoughts during a vegetative state. Then we have this little diagram here where we kind of have some of our sleep included. So you can see here, deep sleep, we have less awareness than, say, REM sleep, which we're going to get into the sleep later in this lecture. And we go all the way up to wakefulness. Wakefulness, we have conscious wakefulness is where we are awake and we are attending to things around us. Like right now, I am in the conscious wakefulness category. So minimal consciousness. Some different categories would be a vegetative state. A vegetative state is where we have minimal consciousness, but like the eyes could actually be open if you're in a vegetative state, but there is no responsiveness going on here. So you can kind of see in this vegetative state, the brain is not firing. We don't have any activity. There is no awareness. If we have awareness, we have brain activity. We can have wakefulness, but we don't necessarily have to have awareness. And if we do that, we're in a vegetative state. Coma is not in this diagram, but if someone is in a coma, they do not have wakefulness and they do not have awareness. So they are unresponsive and unarousable. There's nothing you can do to wake them up. So vegetative state, you could actually even have the eyes open, but there is nothing going on consciously. Minimally conscious, this is where we can see intentional behavior. So they may actually be like able to visually follow a person. Maybe somebody enters their room and they're able to track them, but they're not able to communicate. So there is some brain activity going on, but it's not enough to really have like a full sense of awareness, or alertness to anything happening in their environment. And then we have disorders of consciousness. So this is like the diagnostic category encompassing the range from the vegetative state to minimally conscious. So if you see back here, we had this like this diagram here where we have vegetative state and we have the minimally conscious state. So when we're thinking of any disorders of consciousness, this is kind of just encompassing this range. So it's really hard sometimes to like fully put somebody in the selected category. Are they in a vegetative state completely, or are they minimally conscious? And there are some ethical issues that can arise here, particularly, say, in a medical setting where you're trying to determine next steps with a patient. And are they in a vegetative state or are they minimally conscious? It's kind of hard to like really have a clear-cut answer there. So we think of it like a spectrum. Like, remember when we're looking at this, awareness and wakefulness, consciousness is a spectrum on those two dimensions. Moderate consciousness. Moderate consciousness is what we have when we're dreaming. So we are experiencing some level, like we go back here, of awareness potentially. So monitoring information from the environment and from your own thoughts. So some of your own experiences in the day might come up in a dream. There's some sort of brain activity happening there, but obviously we're not high up on the wakefulness. And this is going to vary based on your stage of sleep that you're in, how wakeful you are or not. So this is going to be when we're dreaming. And this also includes pre-conscious experience. So our minds are processing information outside of our conscious awareness. This is kind of going back to that slide we had here, where we're talking about the global workspace theory, where consciousness is what we're attending to at hand. Well, we also know that partial awareness is happening. So when we think about pre-conscious experience, remember our minds are processing information outside of our conscious awareness. So, for example, you may know a person's name, but you can't recall it in the very moment. It's not in your conscious experience, it's in your pre-conscious experience. That is part of moderate consciousness. You don't have a full awareness of the information. So you're somewhere in that middle ground. Think about this. We're somewhere in this middle ground here with that information. We're not fully aware. We may even be very awake, but it's pre-conscious. We don't have an awareness of it. And some psychologists some theorists such as Freud would argue that moderate consciousness can really influence our conscious behavior. So for example, if you have gone through something according to Freud, if you've gone through something in your childhood that may have been traumatizing for you, perhaps that sits under the surface in your pre-conscious experience, and you might notice, whenever this happens to me now, I have a big emotional reaction and I don't know why. Freud would probably argue that you're responding to something that is in your pre-conscious experience. In that moderate consciousness, we're not fully aware of why I'm getting so upset at this thing, but our brains are processing that information perhaps from something that is not in our conscious awareness. It's in our pre-conscious awareness, and it's influencing our conscious behavior. So moderate consciousness, it's kind of like this gray area. We're not minimally conscious, but we're not fully aware either. We're just either dreaming or we're having some type of pre-conscious experience where it's tip of the tongue phenomenon. We can't really articulate what we're thinking of, but it's there. Full consciousness. We are very awake. We have a lot of wakefulness and we have a lot of awareness. Some examples of full consciousness would include, obviously, just like here and now, I'm awake and I'm aware of talking to you all through this lecture. But pretty much just anytime we're awake and moving around, and noticing the things around us or noticing our thoughts, we are in full consciousness. Some examples of strong experiences of full consciousness would be flow states. This can occur when you are so engaged in an activity that you may not even notice time passing. This is a common phenomenon for people who are maybe engaging in some artistic endeavor where they get so wrapped up in it and they're in that perfect level of wakefulness and awareness that time is just going and they're just enjoying their experience. Flow states are typically very enjoyable for people. Then there's mindfulness, and mindfulness is a heightened awareness of the present moment. This means that I am very aware of what is going on around me. I'm aware of my sensory experiences of everything going on around me. When I am mindful, I'm usually not wrapped up in my thoughts. So I'm not spending a lot of my conscious awareness up here thinking about things. I'm more spending my conscious awareness in the present moment, experiencing what's going on around me, experiencing a conversation I'm having with somebody where I'm fully invested in the moment. I'm not having divided attention where I'm up here thinking about what I'm going to do for dinner later while also trying to have a conversation with you. No, I'm here. I'm being mindful. I'm in the present moment. Selective attention. Selective attention is the ability to focus awareness on specific features in the environment while ignoring others. An example would be maybe you go to do work in a coffee shop and at first you're noticing all of the noises around you, the people talking, the smells of the coffee, and maybe you even have a hard time really paying attention to what you were trying to study. But then maybe once you get going, you're really able to focus that awareness on the study material and you don't really even notice all of the noise going on around you. You've been able to have selective attention. The same thing over here at this party, where Maybe we're talking to somebody and there's all this noise going on and all these other conversations happening, but we're able to have selective attention to the conversation we're a part of. Now, we also know that we're still processing the information going on around us. We're just very consciously aware of the conversation that we're having. The cocktail party effect is a great example of how we are still taking in that information of things going on around us. Now, if we're at this cocktail party and we're talking to somebody and somebody across the room says our name, we hear it. Now, how can we hear it if we're fully consciously aware of talking to that person? Well, we're always still having that partial awareness of the things around us. The cocktail party effect shows that because we are very finely attuned to our names. We give a lot of attention when our names are said. So somebody over there says my name and boom, I hear it. Even though I have no conscious awareness of what that person was saying prior to the moment they said my name and I notice it. That is the cocktail party effect. Inattentional blindness, this can happen with selective attention where we're so focused on one situation or thing that we're doing that we don't even notice something going on around us. Back to that coffee shop thing, you could be so intently focused on studying that you don't even notice the person next to you spills their coffee everywhere, or you don't even notice, I don't know, something else interesting going on in your environment. There's a really popular video that I will put on our modules regarding unintentional blindness, and you can see whether or not you experience unintentional blindness or not. Then finally, perceptual load theory. This states that the ability to attend to information is determined by the demands of the situation and the attention you have at a particular moment. So a demanding task means we are not as aware of distractions. So we're putting more attention, we have more perceptual load towards that demanding task. So say that's studying, for example. I'm really intensely studying. I'm really not noticing all these noises around me. But what if I'm going there and I'm doing some type of task for school? It doesn't really require me to think that much. It's kind of just busy work. I might notice the distractions around me more. I might be eavesdropping on conversations. I might notice the smell of the coffee. I might notice the songs that are changing because I don't have as much perceptual load. So our ability to attend to information is determined by the demands of the situation and the attention you have at a particular moment. Perceptual load theory. Sustained attention. Sustained attention is just our ability to maintain focused awareness on a target or an idea. What we know is that most people have trouble with focusing their attention on a continuous performance task for more than 15 minutes. So a continuous performance task would be, for example, let's say I sat you down in a chair and we brought up like 4 shapes at a time: a square, a triangle, a circle, and a diamond. And your goal was every time these shapes came up, you were supposed to click on the square. And they would just keep coming up in different orders. And you would have to keep clicking on the square and clicking on the square. And we know that besides just being incredibly boring, you would probably start to falter after about 15 minutes. Just sustained attention doesn't last that long. We can't focus that intently. Probably for a continuous performance, you might need to have even more shapes so that you would have to focus intently. But you would probably start getting very, very bored and also just not doing as well after 15 minutes. So sustained attention also applies to anything you all are doing with your homework or studying, where if we're super intently attending to a task at hand, 15 minutes goes by and you might notice we're reading words and we're not even really absorbing them. Your attention has started to falter. That might be a sign that we take a little 5-minute break, a useful 5-minute break. So don't go to something else that requires intense attention or that really messes with your attention. Like don't start phone scrolling or, I don't know, doing anything very intense with your attention. Take that 5 minutes and maybe go for a walk, stand up, stretch, then you can get back to it. Which brings us to multitasking. So multitasking truly does not work. Multitasking maybe can make it feel like it works, but that's primarily because it reduces our perceived effort. So if I'm doing my homework and I have a YouTube video pulled up at the same time, I'm not doing my homework well. I'm not learning well. I'm not going to do a great assignment, but maybe the YouTube video makes me feel like I'm multitasking well because it's reducing my perceived effort. I feel like the experience is easier, more enjoyable. Therefore, multitasking works, but it does not work. This is just compromising our sustained attention. So, that ability to really focus for that 15 minutes is not working. We're getting a new cognitive load every time we switch from task to task to task. You're basically opening up more browser tabs on your computer, and you're not going to be able to do any task as well as you could have done it if you were doing it individually. So all these tasks are competing for access to your consciousness. Thinking about that global workspace theory, you're just throwing all these different things on your global workspace and you're asking your brain to be able to do them all very well. And it's just not going to work. Multitasking does not work. Meditation. This is something that does help with our ability to focus. Meditation includes practices that are used to calm the mind, stabilize our concentration, focus our attention, and enhance awareness of the present moment. Meditation brings us into the present state with the ability to have a heightened awareness of things going on around us in the immediate environment. It helps us be able to not get as hooked on our inner monologues, our inner thoughts. So we're more able to create space from those thoughts and allow them to just exist, which calms our mind down. And it helps us develop something called mindfulness. And mindfulness is a fully conscious state of heightened awareness. Getting back into, like, when we say fully conscious, yes, if we're awake and we're aware of the surroundings around us, we are fully conscious, but it is a spectrum. When we are mindful, we are very fully conscious. We are very aware of things going on around us, and we're in the present moment truly. So you're going to feel like we're not just being a zombie through our life. We're not just going through the motions. We're not here with our friend, but also somewhere else in our minds. We are fully in the present moment. And when we're fully in the present moment, you're going to notice reductions in stress, depression, and anxiety, primarily because when we're not in the present moment, we're probably in our heads thinking about all these things we can't control. So if we're able to be in the present moment, most of the time, the present moment is okay. It's safe. It's fine. So we're going to feel a stronger sense of safety, and we're going to have less rumination. Stress goes down, depression goes down, anxiety goes down. We also have improvements in your overall physical health, reductions in pain, and it's helpful for ADHD. So attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is a lot of these individuals really struggle with sustained attention. So if we are able to practice mindfulness, which is the ability to really be present, be in that moment, it's going to help that ADHD brain that likes to jump around and have 20 million different tabs open at the same time. Practicing meditation can lead to neuroplastic changes in the brain that will help you be more able to have sustained attention. So if you have ADHD, would highly recommend practicing meditation. All right, we'll go into sleeping now. So for sleeping, we have something called circadian rhythm. And a circadian rhythm would be a variation in the physiological processes that cycle within a 24-hour period. This is going to affect our sleep and wake cycle, when our body naturally wants to wake up and when our body naturally wants to go to bed. And we have a timekeeper that's situated in our hypothalamus in our brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. This is stimulated by light, and it helps regulate that daily cycle, that circadian rhythm. This is why it's so important, if you can, to get light as soon as you wake up, true light. So if you can go outside, that would be the best, but at least open your blinds or windows or whatever and get some kind of light immediately, because that is going to cue your body. It's time to wake up. And then when it's time to go to bed, we get those lights off. We don't have the screen in front of our face. You have low lighting if you can, and that's going to tell your brain it is time to go to bed. So you can see here on this little cycle, we're at around 6 a.m. We're going to have cortisol secretion beginning. That's going to start amping us up, getting us ready for the day, getting us ready to wake up. And then you have some insulin secretion with your first meal timing. So your body's going to expect you to be eating something when you wake up. So it's going to give you some insulin so that that blood sugar can be regulated. Around 9 a.m., there's elevated testosterone levels, and you're going to have a peak in alertness around 10 a.m. So if everything is going to plan and you're taking care of your circadian rhythms, the morning should go like that. You should feel pretty alert waking up, and you should be able to get a good start on your day. We're going to have the greatest cardiovascular and skeletal muscle strength around 5 p.m., peak in your lipid levels around 6, body temperature, blood pressure, 7 p.m. And then right around 9 is when you're going to get that melatonin secretion. Some people may get it earlier because they're more sensitive to the sun going down, but it's really important to respect your melatonin secretion. So if your body is saying, all right, it is time for bed. I think a lot of times people still like keep the bright lights on and they go, no, I can make it all the way to midnight. And it's like, you can, but you're going to mess up your circadian rhythm and you're not going to feel well, and your mental health is going to go down and your physical health is going to go down. It is really important to try to get yourself on a healthy circadian rhythm. We have our deepest sleep around 2 in the morning, and then we start the cycle back over again. So circadian rhythm keeps us alert, happy, healthy. So we need to try to trust in our circadian rhythm. And yeah. All right, so here are some metrics of your body that fluctuate throughout the day. So you can see here, alertness is going to peak right around here, right around that 4 to 5 p.m. for most people. And then we see it going downhill like this. So it's probably not the best time to try to do your work. If it's like 10 p.m. at night, you're just not going to be very alert. And then here we do not have alertness because we are literally asleep. Then it's going to rise back up and fall. And your melatonin levels that are trying to cue you to go to bed, you can see, boom, they start having a big spike here right about when the sun has left us and it's saying it is time to sleep. And they keep us in that deep sleep state. And then they start dropping when it's time for us to wake back up. While we're sleeping, we experience rapid eye movements. These are quick movements of the eye occurring during sleep, and they tend to correspond with dreams. So you're literally fluttering back and forth in your, like while you're sleeping. And this is typically when we're having those dreams. The theory behind rapid eye movement is that we're processing the day's events or the week's events or whatever. We're just processing the information that we have experienced, and our brain is trying to figure out what to do with it. Like, do we store it in long-term memory? Where does it go? REM sleep is really important for your brain to solidify anything you've learned in the day. So we have to make sure we're getting good REM sleep. And then the non-REM sleep, that would be where we're not really having many eye movements. You can see here, the amount of REM sleep that we experience varies based on our age. So babies are super, super big on the REM sleep. And then it starts decreasing, boom, 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 all the way down here. And then most of our sleep is going to be non-REM. So we have different sleep waves in our brain that are going on while we're sleeping. We have the delta, theta, alpha, and beta waves. So delta waves, this is going to dominate N3 sleep, which is our deepest stage of sleep. You can see them over here. They're very slow. We have theta waves. These are when we're transitioning from an awake to a sleep cycle. And they occur during N1 sleep. That's what that transitional sleep stage is. I think it's about like 7 to 10 minutes. And that's when we're no longer responsive. So right when we're getting asleep, we're going to have these theta waves. Alpha waves are when we're very relaxed and drowsy, but we're not asleep yet. They look like that. And then beta waves are when we are awake. And you can see here, we got a lot of waves going on here, a lot of that brain activity happening. When we are awake, we are alert. I don't know why that graph is not staying, but it was just kind of looking at the different waves we experience during the different sleep cycles. So, why do we need to sleep? Sleep is going to support several processes for us: neural growth, so making those new connections in our brain, a metabolic cleanup of our bodies, memory consolidation. Like I said, in that REM sleep in particular, we're really just making sense of what happened to us. What do I need to remember? What do I not need to remember? Protects us against cellular damage as well. So, sleep deprivation is going to inhibit the growth of any new neurons. So, we're not going to be making those connections in our brain. It's going to be harder for us to solidify what we've learned. And it's actually going to impair production of a chemical that makes up your myelin sheath. So, if you remember, the myelin sheath protected that neuron, the impulses going down that we need to fire. So, that's going to just make everything sluggish. And 40% of adults in the United States suffer from sleep deprivation. They're in a sleep debt. And what are the dangers of sleep debt? Over here, we have higher risk of heart disease and heart attack, increased risk of accidents, depression, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, excessive anger. So you're just going to be more irritable. So, how much sleep do we need? We need, for adults, at least 7 hours of sleep, at least, I would say, because while you may think, oh, I got 7 hours of sleep, how much of that were you actually awake? How much of that was high quality sleep? What is your sleep quality like? A lot of people don't have great sleep quality because of like habits, like dietary habits or exercise habits. So I would aim for at least 8 hours, really. If you're getting like 6 hours, you may feel like you're okay, but most likely you are in a sleep debt and you've just adjusted to it. Screens do interfere with our sleep process. So we really just need to make sure we're getting off the phones, getting off the TV, really at least 2 hours prior to the time you're trying to sleep. Reading would be great. Talking to a partner, if you have a partner, playing with a pet, like just anything where we're not messing with our brain's ability to produce melatonin. Sleep disorders. So we have some sleep disorders that get in the way of us getting that high quality sleep. Insomnia, that's going to be a difficulty falling and staying asleep. Some things that can cause insomnia over there: stress is a big one, mental health disorders, age. So we know that people tend to have more insomnia as they get older. Some medications, physical pain, pregnancies, irregular sleep schedules, that is a big one. So if you're somebody who wakes up at a certain time during the weekdays and then on the weekends you're like, I'm going to sleep in 3 hours, those irregular sleep schedules that mess with your circadian rhythm can generate insomnia. Sleepwalking, that's activities in non-REM sleep that usually occur when one is awake. So we see sleepwalking more in children, but it's basically where we're moving about, but we are not actually having any real true full awareness of what we're doing. Narcolepsy, that's excessive daytime sleepiness and weakness in facial and limb muscles. So people with narcolepsy may find that they fall asleep and they don't really feel like they're in control of that. And they also just feel sleepy a lot of the day. Sleep apnea, this is a chronic disorder in which there are pauses in breathing during sleep. So sleep apnea can be caused through genetic means, but it's also very prevalent in any individuals who are overweight or obese, where the airway is constricted from the added weight. And this can cause a variety of health problems like heart disease, high blood pressure, but it also can cause mental health disorders. So there are higher rates of attention deficit disorder from sleep apnea, depression, anxiety. So if you feel like that's something you might be experiencing, it'd be great to go get a sleep study, because correcting sleep apnea can correct a lot of other mental and physical health difficulties for you. And then night terrors. So somebody who has night terrors is walking around speaking incoherently and they awaken terrified. So they're having terrible nightmares, and then they're also like exhibiting signs that they may even be awake. They're almost like sleepwalking, but they're just having a terrible, terrible dream. And then there are just nightmares. There's also nightmare disorder, where you're just having nightmares at a very frequent rate that would be not expected in the normal population. And that's more common in people who have a history of trauma. Dreaming, according to Freud. So dreams, images, thoughts, and feelings experienced during sleep. I think you all know probably what dreams are because you have had dreams. Sigmund Freud would say that your dreams are attempts to satisfy your unconscious wishes. So there is the manifest level of dreams, according to him. That's literally what happens in your dream. I was able to fly and I flew around the world. Okay, that's your manifest level. Latent level would be the deeper unconscious level of dreams where their meaning is found. So Freud would be like, well, you were flying all around the world because you're wanting a sense of freedom and you feel trapped in your current situation. Manifest level and latent level. And there's not really great scientific evidence to back up Freud, but there is something to be said that sometimes what we're trying to process can come up in our dreams. But don't take it as like a black and white, my dream said this and therefore this. It's really not a hard science. So Freud was just trying to make connections, as he did. The biological theory of dreaming, otherwise known as the AIM theory, AIM, says that dreams are devoid of meaning. They are completely random brain activity. So they would say Freud is out of his mind. Don't even try to make sense of your dreams. It's literally just neural activation, whether you're getting internal or external stimulation from your environment, and whether your mental state is logical or loose illogical. So is our brain just firing everywhere and it's just super illogical, or are we kind of having some sort of rationality to what's going on with our brain? So you can see over here in this diagram, they charted REM sleep, non-REM sleep, and waking. So they have a high activation here. So there's a lot of neural activation going on when we're in REM sleep, according to the biological theory. But the stimulation is all internal. So we're all in our heads. We're not doing anything in the active environment. And our mode or our mental state is loose illogical. So everything's just firing randomly and we're all over the place. Versus when we're awake, you would be in the logical mode. Your simulation would be external. So we're in the real world. And we are still having a high amount of neural activation. So we're alert. Biological theory says your dreams are pointless. Cognitive theory says that your dreams are not pointless. They are not that different from your everyday thinking. So the standard processes used during our waking life are going to operate in a similar manner during dreaming. So this is kind of getting into like maybe what we've experienced in our daily life is going to come up in our dreams a little bit. Maybe not like in a very logical way, but maybe it'll show up. You ran into an old friend that day and boom, they're in your dream that night. And an example of cognitive theory here, before age 9, children's dreams actually are more like a slideshow and less like an active story. So they're believing that our dreams are based on concepts and knowledge, getting back to that learned process that changes as we experience more in the world. So when we're kids, we're not able to really put together that active story because cognitively that's just not where we're at yet. But as we gain more concepts and knowledge and as we develop, then we're able to have more interesting dreams, so to speak. We're able to pull things from our conscious awareness, and our pre-conscious is going to get involved, and we're just all mixing it all together, but it's more of a learned process. And they talk about that dreams are a top-down process, not a bottom-up process. So top-down is meaning we're using models, ideas, and expectations to interpret sensory information. So whatever's firing in our brain, basically our own like experiences are going to get involved in what we're dreaming with. So just think cognitive theory is that dreams are pretty similar to how we deal in our everyday lives. And some of the stuff that we're thinking in our everyday lives may come into our dreams or may interpret or may color our interpretation of our dreams as well. All right, so we'll get into altering consciousness with drugs. So psychoactive drugs, they would lead to tolerance if we took them a lot, withdrawal symptoms if we took them a lot. They could also lead to hallucinations. They can lead to addiction. All you need to know is psychoactive drugs are going to alter your consciousness in some sort of way, depending on the drug. Depressants. So if we're taking a depressant, These substances will decrease or slow down our central nervous system activity. Alcohol, for example, specifically suppresses our social regulatory functions in our cerebral cortex. So that will lower any social inhibitions. This is why people who drink may do things that they normally would not do, particularly in a social context, how they talk to other people, what they say. Depressants also include sedatives such as benzodiazepines, such as Xanax, tranquilizers, barbiturates. They're going to slow the heart and breathing. They're just slowing everything down. Things like benzodiazepines, for example, when prescribed, are meant to slow that nervous system activity down to maybe prevent somebody from having a panic attack. But all of these depressants listed have a potential for abuse. So alcohol, benzodiazepines, tranquilizers, barbiturates, opioids, all depressants. Stimulants. So depressants are slowing the central nervous system down. Stimulants are activating the central nervous system, raising your heart rate, your respiration, and your brain activity. Some examples for prescription stimulants would be any type of ADHD medication that's a stimulant. They have some non-stimulant ADHD medications now, but most of them are stimulant. And legal stimulants, caffeine. So if you drink coffee, that is a stimulant. Your nervous system is going to be activated. Notice next time when you have a cup of coffee, what happens to your heart rate? What happens to your brain activity? Do you feel more alert? Yeah, probably. That's why you probably drank the cup of coffee. Chocolate is also a stimulant because it has caffeine in it. Nicotine, cold medicine is a stimulant. And then we have our illegal stimulants. So cocaine, meth, MDMA, these are going to really, really activate the nervous system way more than a cup of coffee would do. And once again, like all these have a potential for addictive qualities. People can get addicted to ADHD meds. People can get addicted to caffeine, where they do have, like we said here on this first slide, they have a tolerance. They have to drink more coffee. They have withdrawal. They have a headache if they don't have coffee. You shouldn't be having hallucinations on coffee, but yeah, but we don't need all these. But there will be a change in your conscious experience with any of these drugs, depressants or stimulants. Then we have our hallucinogens. This very clearly can change our consciousness, creating a distorted perception of reality, all the way from mild to extreme. So marijuana would be considered one of the hallucinogens, and it alters the brain body. It will change mood to create euphoria and changes perception. So time perception would change. Food perception can also change. LSD, that's going to be a more dramatic change in your conscious experience. And that may be good or bad for an individual. Sometimes that experience is a negative conscious experience, and sometimes it's a positive one. And then psilocybin is an active ingredient of hallucinogenic mushrooms that will also distort your conscious experience. So that is it for this lecture. Consciousness, that is how we are going through our daily life. Every present moment that we are conscious, we are having some interpretation. We are having wakefulness and we are having awareness on that dimension. And yeah, that is our lecture on consciousness. So thank you for this week, and we are done.